it's not like work. Being an entrepreneur isn't like work. It's like playing a game.
You like being in the fast lane, Joe?
I do like being in the fast lane. When you've been self-employed, it's hard to go back. The first time you fail will be the last.
Yeah.
Unless you want to keep feeling that way. It wasn't that easy to get clients being young.
Yeah.
So, I remember turning up on your moped actually.
Yeah. Joe Lane, welcome. Thanks for coming down today. For those that are listening, Joe is a very exciting guest. I've known you since I can remember. Since high school, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming down today. Really appreciate having you here. I'm really excited to get into it and give the audience some fantastic value.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait to get into the stories.
No, pleasure. I mean, for those that have never heard you before, because I know you're quite prolific on social media as well, and obviously you've been in the property scene for many years now, just as long as me. For those that aren't listening, tell us a little bit about yourself, Joe. Where you come from, all the way back from those American roots, and everything you've done along the way, and we'll dive into a lot more detail.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Joe Lane, I'm 28. I am a property developer and I own a couple of businesses. So my journey started when I was about 16 in property, where I opened a letting shop with Dorian, for those who don't know. So even from a younger age, even younger than that, when me and Dorian met in school, we would always talk about business ideas, some of them a bit far out, but eventually as we got older, some of them were a bit more realistic. And eventually everything was about property. So where we then went our own paths to hit the business world. We both, funnily enough, actually stayed amongst property in some way, and it's interesting to see where we are at now and come back together. All roads lead to Rome.
Definitely, and this is why I'm really excited, because we've gone through so much together since school, being in business together, and then watching each other flourish in our own businesses, and even our businesses, still have interactions with each other even today after all these years. But if I just take us all the way back to the beginning. So, Joe, as we speak now, you're a property investor, you're a property developer, you're the managing director of Mortgage Lane, which is a really fast-growing, full boutique property investment advisory firm, and you're also the managing director of Square Scaffolding. So you've got a lot of strings to your bows. Even when I met you when I was in school, you already had. I think you had a business set up before I did. And that's saying something.
Well, the thing is, with these businesses, young on, a lot of the profit from them was just knowledge. It wasn't financial profit, But had to go at...
Because I remember that. I was thinking, I remember back in school now, just trying to cast my mind back to all those years ago. And you had like a digital business, and you was buying and selling stuff online, and you were like a teenager or around about that age. And I thought, that's quite cool. And that's, I suppose, one of the other reasons why I was entrepreneurial in school as well, as you can remember. And when the time came, I thought, if there's going to be one person who I could get into business with to go forward, it's going to be Joe.
Yeah.
I just knew it was going to be you. And look, today, you're still running businesses. And so it's been excellent watching you grow as well.
Thank you.
We've gone through a lot together.
A lot. And it's nice to see your enterprise here. It's insane what you've built.
Yeah. So, well, thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
So for those listening then, what was it like setting a business up at a young age for you? I mean, what inspired you to do that?
The thing is, right, you almost feel like a bit of an outsider. You'll remember as well, when we were trying to grow that lettings business and get people to work with us, being young in business is hard because you don't get taken seriously a lot of the time. And what you'll also find is that you have to feel like you need to prove yourself consistently. And even at 28, I'm sure you still feel that way sometimes. You're sometimes in front of big people. So, you really have to show what you can do.
Yeah.
Now, when I was 16, obviously it wasn't that easy to get clients being young. Yeah. So, I remember turning up on your moped actually to a landlord's property that we were trying to take on. It was a block of flats, and what we did different is we used to take reference tenants with us.
That's right.
And they knew we meant business, they knew.
Yeah.
So
God, we must look so young.
We did,
Thinking back on it.
How do you turn a 16-year-old boy away with like 10 reference tenants ready to go, and they want to move in and pay the deposit there and then? So
and then we also developed such a strong skill in cold calling. Can you remember that? We scaled the business via cold calling, and as you said, effectively bring in pre-reference tenants. So for them, the speed of closing, getting somebody in was much faster.
Yeah.
But that cold calling and the sales skill, would you say sales is such a a vital skill for any entrepreneur 100%. Or business owner?
Yeah, you have to sell yourself. That's the first thing. But you can transform that into then growing an enterprise. Yeah. Constantly selling whatever it is, whether it's a product yourself, you know, your method of work,
Yeah.
you know, whatever that is,
And-
quality.
Yeah, no, I
Sell it.
Yeah, I agree. And where do you, for those listening as well, one of the big part about sales is of self-confidence.
Self-confidence, 100%. No one's looking to deal with someone who isn't sure of themselves. But also, you need to be confident in what you're selling, and not just confident in what you're selling, in the quality of it.
Yeah, yeah, no. And how did you develop that self-confidence? Because you've always been a confident person, and I remember in the business as well, it was you know, it got to the stage. I think I'm quite self-confident, but I do remember thinking that you were more self-confident than I was, and you were better at cold calling than I was.
Yeah, I think the thing with consumers is you need to understand the consumer, right? And understand what they want and what their reservations are, because that's the only thing that's going to get you from, you know, them coming to you rather than the competitor.
Yeah.
If you understand the consumer and you can solve their problems and you can take issues away from them,
Yeah.
they'll buy from you, especially if you're confident with that.
Yeah.
So I guess when you've done that a number of times,
Yeah.
you get to the situation where you're so confident in yourself, then, you know, there's no anxiety in it anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
And obviously, as we grew that business, we learned a lot of mistakes along the
a
way.
lot of mistakes.
We had some of those great successes. I still remember some of the letting fees we made now. There's never a better. I still haven't had a better feeling in terms of money making
Yeah.
than, you know, back then with that few £100 as a 16-year-old. It just felt like a lot of money.
It did feel like so much,
Yeah.
but you know, in looking at inflation now, you know,
I know.
but yeah, it is, and now it's about accumulation.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing.
So how do you take that? How did you take that next step then? I mean, because obviously you then went on. We both went separate things. You went on to do your own investments in HMOs and your own portfolio building and commercial acquisitions, and you set up a mortgage company as well, finance service practice. How did you do that?
Well, the thing was, right, I had no experience in mortgages, and I was still quite young. I was 21 when I qualified CMAP, just about 21. And I couldn't get a job. You know, I was really trying to get a job.
Yeah.
And it's funny, actually, because I'll talk about it later maybe, but I'm actually going for an award for mortgage strategy for Best Buy-to-Let Broker.
Nice.
Now, I'm actually up against a firm that's got far more staff than I have, and I'm up against them for the same award.
Yeah.
So it's actually interesting how they probably knew that I was unemployable. When you've been self-employed, it's hard to go back, and you know, obviously heading into a professional role,
Yeah.
you sort of think, well, I need some experience first. But actually, I got given an opportunity by you know, Morgan, who I worked with. I was a self-employed broker from day one, and it's actually interesting how he gave me the opportunities, put me on the spot beyond my capabilities.
Yeah.
To do talks. You know, I was probably doing a talk at a property event within 2 weeks, right?
Nice.
I wasn't ready for that. I'll never forget being stood in front of 50 people and not knowing what I was going to say. And that has carried with me ever since.
So now you'd like to be prepared.
I'd like to be prepared. It'll never happen again.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as bad as that seems to anyone who's going to start public speaking, etc., the first time you fail will be the last.
Yeah.
Unless you want to keep feeling that way.
Oh God, that brings me back to our old school motto. It's just come back to me now. What was it? It was a failure to prepare.
Yeah, it's preparing to fail. Best advice they ever gave us.
It's the only thing I took away from that school. Yeah, no, that's good. But we've always been. I know. I felt like the same as well, and you too, watching Origin, in that David v Goliath situation all the time. We've always been Davids up against Goliaths. You know, whether it's breaking into industries with no experience. You know, I've done the same. You've done the same. People not wanting to give you a chance, and they're much further ahead, being up against much bigger companies, much more experienced companies. But you know, there is some skill in being a David. You know, you can really get yourself in and make a name for yourself quite quickly, can you?
Yeah, but there's fun in that challenge.
Yeah,
there is so much fun in that challenge, and you'll always get people that doubt you, whatever you do, and that's fuel. You know, that's so much fuel. And I've come to enjoy the process. You know, when you have a first go at business, you know, it's so it can be disheartening sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be quite nervous.
Yeah.
But now I enjoy it.
Yeah. So you got that chance. You got that branch from Morgan, and you went self-employed, and you've scaled it from there. I mean, what's been one of the biggest takeaways so far on your journey of growing Mortgage Lane?
You've got to know where you want to go. I mean, I could have stayed as a self-employed broker, had a couple of staff, etc. But I knew when the cases were coming in, I don't turn people away. You know, and we were in a very buoyant time of the market where people were buying everywhere. Because I was so busy and I had such a good team, I had the freedom to go out and do talks. I was public speaking all the time.
Yeah.
And off the back of that, the business grew in volume. So I found myself in a position where I was a self-employed broker, effectively under another brokerage. So it wasn't my brand. But I had a team of 18 within 18 months.
Yeah, well.
So it got to the point where it didn't make sense for me anymore to remain where I was. And I went directly authorised then in 2021, which was quite a big process. And the thing with that is...
So you're now directly authorised?
We are directly authorised, Mortgage Lane, and we've now become a network.
Nice.
But becoming directly authorised comes with costs. It comes with a lot of costs, overheads that you didn't have when you're under a firm or a network. And those costs need to be subsidised by having enough of a unit, enough to trade in order to make that viable, more viable than being in a brokerage, for example. So luckily, even though I was maybe taking commissions of 70% at times and maybe slightly more up from there, but when you've got a team of 18 and you're paying all of their wages and you're only getting that commission, like I had to really know what I wanted, because I could have made more money probably with less staff in that place. But now, obviously, I don't regret that.
Yeah, of course.
It's called a sacrifice.
Yeah, I understand. But managing a team is so... It's one of those, isn't it? It's a necessity, and it can be such a great thing, but it can also be such a difficult process, especially because you're so self-driven. You're an entrepreneur, and you're a business person, and you're such a driver. I remember as well. There was never a point where you was like, from what I remember and what I can see, like, we can't do this or you can't do that. There's no limiting belief factors. Like, whatever you want, you can just get it.
Yeah, 100%.
Just go for it.
Do you know what I think about an entrepreneur? I think an entrepreneur is not knowing everything, but knowing where to find out.
Oh, yeah, a resource gatherer.
Yeah,
isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
It's like, if
I need to get
something,
there,
I'll know soon.
Yeah.
I'll know who to ask or where to go.
And so that's vital. But what was it like then bringing in your first team members and managing them? And how did you get them on board with your vision? And how did you get them to perform?
When you start taking on people, you realise that what you need now from people that you do take on, and the competency and the experience. And I was quite lucky because I had a few family members that joined me, still with me now. Some of my best staff. So Jack, my brother, my first member of staff, he's now self-employed under the network. So it's nice actually when family and business works well. It's great, because if I work,
it's quite rare as well.
It is
good,
rare. Yeah, but like if you're working 60 hours a week and you can integrate that with family as well, how efficient is that? Do you know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean.
So I have been quite lucky. Saren's our operations director, my little sister. She's not so little anymore.
No, I remember her when she was like that tall.
I know, but she's so good and so knowledgeable, and that's why we're able to live up to our strap line, finance in the fast lane, and be as good as we are.
You like being in the fast lane, Joe?
I do like being in the fast lane. The thing is, I like the slow process. We've all experienced that as a consumer, and to own a business and to be proud of that business, that needs to be quick, and it needs to be good for the consumer.
100%. And then, so the services obviously that you're in, residential, commercial, bridging, development. You then went off and built your own portfolio as well, didn't you? What advice do you have for those watching that might be interested in making their first step and doing their own first property investment or portfolio? Where do they go? What do they do?
100%. The thing is, right, with property investing, a lot of people tend to go into joint ventures, Now, the thing is with a joint venture, whilst that can be great for people who have no money but loads of time, joint venturing with people who have loads of money and no time, it's a great joint venture usually, especially for people at the start of their journey who might know enough to invest but just don't have that capital. Now, whilst that's a good arrangement, having a joint venture is also like having a marriage. If there's going to be longevity in that, you need to make sure that your vision is aligned. Now, one of the things that I'd be recommending for people who intend to be in a joint venture for a long time is they need to have a joint venture agreement. So things are written down. People's paradigms change. People's recollection of agreements change. And also, if you're not looking to be in business for 30 years with someone, have an exit plan. And that exit plan should be within, medium to short term. I would say maybe even 5 years. And the thing is then, you'll have enough equity from that sale or that exit to do it yourself. And I think I've always been one of them people that have always done well on their own. You have as well, I know that. And the thing is, when you're doing things on your own, you don't need those agreements. You can change your mind, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But often when you're in a joint venture, it's not always okay, because you need all them hands to go in for the same thing. So
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's if I'm trying to put my mind back to if I was to come into this industry again and I had no knowledge, it's different for us now because we've spent so long, we've got over decades worth of experience each in terms of contacts and knowledge and resource. If we was to start again now, but we kept our contacts, our resource, and our knowledge, we would very quickly get, I believe, back to a similar position in a fraction of a time.
In a fraction.
But if you were starting with no knowledge, no resources, and no connections, the very first thing, which I know is advice people may not want to hear, but they have to build their knowledge up before you go out and try and raise money from people and do deals. Because property is great when you do it well.
Yeah.
If you do it badly, you will lose money.
Well, yeah. The thing is, and that's taking on something that. Obviously, anything in property is risk.
Yeah.
But if you make that smaller, you like the thing is, a lot of my best lessons have come from failure and from loss of profits.
Yeah.
You'll never do them again. And also, going into planning and finding things out later that you probably could have found out in a pre-application. It's vital to know, because there can be some planning concessions that work against you that you didn't know, and you're going to go into a planning application 100%. Full steam ahead. You paid the architect however many thousand, you're going in for it, you're waiting for the day to come, and you get decline. And then your architect,
and then in the response, then it says, you should have done this, and then you said to your architect, well, why didn't you tell me that? Well, I'm not a planning consultant. I was just designed it for you to win your award.
Exactly, literally.
But yeah, so I would definitely, it's all about getting that knowledge base up and then going out, networking, building your connections, which is a big part of the resource I was talking about. If you get your knowledge and you get those resources and contacts, sooner or later you'll come across an investor that sees that you already have the knowledge. So when both me and you went out networking to raise money and working with investors, they already seen that, the way we was talking and the way we were answering questions, we already had the knowledge level there. They had the trust was already there. Or they know what they're on about. They know what they're doing. I could entrust them with my money basically to go and do a deal, and they know what to do about it. So that's a critical thing from my point of view.
It is, and like even yourself, you've become seasoned in many ways. Like you started off at accountancy, now you're a quantity surveyor, qualification-wise,
Yeah,
maybe not.
I'm
practicing.
just a big nerd now.
Well, the thing is, you accumulate all of this, and now you're able to have higher level conversations with all of these relevant professionals. I had an accountancy background as well on the ACCA program too, which was, great, but. Even though I didn't want to be an accountant, I don't regret that time.
Oh, it's good skill set.
It is a good skill set.
Accountancy for me was such a good foundation level.
Yeah.
Numbers at the end of the day I'm just finishing a book now on Ryanair and Michael O'Leary, and he said I've got an accountancy background and how they scaled Ryanair to be the most profitable airline company in the UK, and it's phenomenal what they've done. But such a good, for me, the way we've scaled here and how we know we're going to keep scaling sustainably, even though it looks like a high growth rate, is because we have financial models that that I've learned through accountancy and analysing other businesses and business models, and the numbers talk to me when we have a conversation together. It's just in my head, but yeah, it's such a good foundation for anyone to get into business.
It is.
But what tips and advice do you have for those listening that want to maybe set up their own business, maybe not necessarily property or investment, but they want to set up their own business from scratch? If you was to speak to little Joe again about going into setting up a mortgage company, what would you be saying?
I would say for someone who's looking to set up their own business, I would say understand capital adequacy. Because if you're starting small and working with small enterprises, that's good. But you also need to make sure that's the case. If you're heading into big contracts and things that are out of your depth, and you're not checking other businesses' capital adequacies and things like that, you can easily fail. So I would say de-risk it as much as possible, and by looking at your target market, what the demand is, looking at your costs, and this comes back round to the accountancy thing that helped me, was just understanding how a business needs to work commercially.
Yeah.
If you don't understand how a business works commercially, it's a massive risk. So if you take on maybe a small enterprise where you can learn and inevitably most businesses fail, within the first couple of years, and don't make profit. And that's the situation where you have to be prepared to be in order to eventually make something work.
And you've just gone through another startup again over the past past few years. You've scaled up from scratch a scaffolding company.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of contracts definitely from scratch. The thing is with scaffolding, because it's a massively, it's a big capital expenditure business. So, all your profits are eventually going back into equipment to grow. So it's not one of those businesses where, you can push paper and take profit out monthly from the start. So it's one of them businesses that if you want to grow and you want good things, big things, then what you find is that you'll never see profit for quite a long time.
Sounds like property development.
So yeah, I do like buying businesses in that aspect. I mean, even though this business was trading, I could have kept it trading with his existing contracts in place. I decided to sort of kill those and replace those with others, using the equipment and also using my own connections for workforce. So right now, we have bought more scaffolding businesses that have gone out of business, but in that type of industry, they're not the type of entities that you'd want to keep going.
Yeah,
it's more about buying
their stock, is it?
Their stock, vehicles, and actually that saves you a lot of time. Instead of going out and buying all that individually, and also second-hand equipment is a good margin when it comes to scaffolding. Now, having said that, when you're looking at larger scaffolding companies that are good and they are trading, they've got good accounts, and they're not just putting their cash in their back pocket, you've actually got something to go off then. You can raise business finance against the company that you're going to buy, and you can also maybe look at the financing existing vehicles if they're new enough, and things like that, where you can then reduce your investment in that business and merge it with your existing company. So yeah, whilst at the moment it's been a lot of just buying equipment from businesses that are shutting down, we have actually got businesses in the pipeline that are running, and we are looking to merge with ours. So that'll be exciting to see what comes of that.
Nice. So in mergers and acquisitions as well, Joe. Wow.
Well, and that's another thing, so I'm not actually an expert at that. So I'm sure there'll be some lessons to come,
Yeah, definitely.
There will be.
But no, it's good to see you still going full steam ahead and unfazed, but also obviously building a good team around you as well at the same time. So, where is Joe heading then? Where do you want to go? What does the next 5 years look like for you?
Yeah, so recently my goals have changed. I'd like to see Mortgage Lane be valued at 100 million. I'd like to see Square Scaffolding be valued at 500 million.
Wow.
So from there, huge property development business.
What do you do then? Will you retire on your yacht?
No. See, this is the thing, right? When I was younger, I thought I'd retire at 30.
Okay.
And now not far away
Getting
from that
close now.
Yeah, very close now. Yeah. And we're not so young anymore. And I've thought about that, and I've been on holidays for 2 weeks and things like that, and 8 days in I'm like, I want to get back to work. It's actually what I love doing, and I spring out of bed in the morning, I'm happy to go to work, and it's not like work. Being an entrepreneur isn't like work. It's like playing a game, and the thing is, like, everyone needs downtime, right?
Yeah.
But I don't need so much downtime as I ever thought I did, and also I don't get so much joy out of just resting, to be honest.
Do you ever get this? Because from the outsider's view, people say that to me as well. It's like, I'm always on the go, and if I'm not necessarily in the office, I'm always thinking about work, the next step. What else could we be doing? And if you ever look at my notebooks, you'll see pages and pages all the time of business plans. I'm just rewriting them, but just can't help myself. But do you ever get people saying to you, Joe, you've got to be careful, you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out.
All the time.
Yeah.
People are concerned I'm not happy. I'm telling you, I'm very happy. I'm ecstatic. My days are great, and I know yours are too. And the thing is, right, in business, there's always problems, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I just can't wait to fix this problem. But I don't think like that anymore, because I know that tomorrow there'll be another problem.
Yeah.
There's always problems wherever. And to be fair, now, we've seen that many problems. They don't faze you anymore, I'm sure. Same for you.
Yeah, no, 100%, definitely. I've had problems today.
Yeah.
But you just know you've got that self-belief, and with the team around you, you can get through most things. I always say to the people in the office here, if they can dig a tunnel from London to France underneath the sea, I'm pretty sure we can get through this.
Yeah, 100%.
We're building timber houses here. I'm pretty sure we can resolve this. And that's what I do. I take a step back and look at the perspective. People think that, we have a big company or we're having a big impact. And I take a step back and I look at the real big companies in the world who are having a global impact, and they're doing multi-billion pound deals, transactions, and affecting hundreds of thousands of people's lives. And then I think to myself, that's big.
That is big. And obviously to get there, that's problems,
Yeah.
So talk to me about some of the problems you've had then.
Oh, we'll need a long time for this.
Yeah.
We have problems.
Maybe isolate one.
Oh, God. I mean, we have problems in operations that we're not performing, especially because I guess one of my problems, and I don't know if you're like this as well, we have a tendency to slip into perfectionism mode.
All the time. I don't know whether it's OCD or not.
Yeah.
I haven't gone down the clinical route.
Yeah. We've got this business plan, and I've got this strong vision in my head that I can see it crystal clear. And I know that in theory, and this is the problem, in theory, if the finances and the financial metrics are this, and if the people are all doing this, and if the system and execution metrics and operational metrics are all this, then the theory is we should move forward to that objective. And then that's the thing, is you become like a pilot in an airplane cockpit, and you have all of these dials and all of these metrics, and some are like flashing red, some are green, which is great. And then, but you're then focusing on those red, and you hear like the siren noise, and like something's just gone off. That's, oh my God, I've got to resolve that now. But yeah, sometimes you could slip into perfectionism mode, because just because something's red doesn't mean that you're not gonna get there. It's just, something's gone slightly off, and sometimes you can't control it.
You can't control it, and you've got to find that you can't be disappointed in, the plan or the people, because it's no one's fault.
Yeah.
It's just business, and that's the industries that we're in.
Yeah.
I'm sure most are the same.
But what I've learned...
Have faith, and it will work out.
Yeah, what I've learned, if you're the same as this as well, is that you can have a strong vision, but be flexible in your approach. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I used to have a strong vision and a strong approach. Like, this is the way we've got to do it. But that isn't what happens. I still know where the end goal is, but now I'm more flexible. All right, okay, this is the issue. Can't really control that, so we're gonna have to think of some form of pivot here.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do that still lets us get there and get the team around, and everyone collaborates, employ based on people buying into the vision and really monitoring that as well. And the stronger the culture around you, people all wanting that same objective, the easier it'll be to get there. Then that's what I think. Do you think the same?
I think exactly the same thing. Everyone's got to, and it just makes the end goal easier when everyone wants the same thing.
Yeah.
It's inevitability. Otherwise, it's just you sitting there that wants one thing, and everyone else is just there for the ride.
Yeah, definitely.
Everyone needs to share the vision.
Yeah.
But how do you procure that for people who are looking to get into business?
Yeah.
You may have to incentivize staff. And you may have to choose the right staff, staff that actually want to be in the industry, purposely in the industry, or, have something personal about it that makes them want it too.
And what's a key attribute that you look for in a good team member? For someone to come onto your team, what are you looking for?
Ownership.
Right. What does that mean?
Well, when things go wrong, ownership. When things go right, ownership. Even
none of this, it wasn't my fault.
None of this, it wasn't my fault. Because the thing is, right, how do you work on something that can't be admitted?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, being an entrepreneur as well, it's funny actually now, right? Because I pray for the day when I can get something wrong so I can learn. I pray for the day where someone can pull me up on something, because I love that. I fucking love that. I do. I absolutely love that, because then I'm better, In
terms of talking about betterment, what do you do for self-development? Because obviously you got the weight of all these two companies on your shoulder and all your investments, and a lot of responsibility, and also you've grown at a fast pace, and you've been on this journey since day one. What do you do to stay ahead of yourself? You talked about people pulling you up, but what do you do? Like, what does your self-development routine look like?
I put myself in vulnerable positions where I could easily get things wrong.
Correct.
And the thing is, that drives you to need to know the answer to things. And that's what I do. I constantly put myself in vulnerable positions. The obvious one is doing talks. Yeah. In front of a panel of experienced investors that could ask you anything, right? And if you get a sniff of something that you might not be au fait with, you need to find out.
Yeah, I love that.
Otherwise, I can't live with myself, and that's the type of pressure you need to be better.
We'll talk about that there, because you mentioned pressure there. how do you, and for those listening as well, if they want to get into business or scale, you know, a relatively large property empire or anything really, it does come with a lot of pressure, right?
Comes with loads of pressure.
How do you manage that?
I love it. I embrace the pressure. There's no managing it, if I'm honest.
Right.
Well, actually, I tell a lie, right? So I do focus on wellness a lot, right? My diet's had to change. I know what I should eat, what crashes me, what I can eat if I'm going on the road. Thing is, right, sometimes, like, you know, I could be working in the office all day. I could be flying to Scotland for a property meeting in the night. And then I could be going to bed late, waking up at 6 and flying back in the morning and straight back in the office.
Yeah.
And then probably working on, you know, till midnight again sometimes. It depends. But to do that, you have to look after yourself. You know, so that little sleep you do get, it needs to be focused. You know, you need to work on that sleep quality. Everyone needs sleep. Everyone needs energy. So
How many hours a day do you sleep?
Well, you know, these days I have about 6 hours if I'm lucky.
Okay.
And the kids have me up far too early. So,
Yeah.
well, to be fair, I'm not a lot less than I used to need.
And how many hours do you think you need sleep?
6. Honestly,
6.
I do. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
feel unrested.
You don't?
No. What about you?
Oh, I'm the same, but I've had broken sleep for years now, so
You do get used to it, yeah.
so I get used to it. Yeah. Like last night I went to bed at gone 11 o'clock, and I was up at 5. So yeah, it's about 6. But I'm normally in bed about between 11 and midnight, and I'm up normally between 4:30 and 5. Get to the gym then for 6, and gets you going in the day. Then
It does get you going, yeah, 100%. It gets the system going.
And then in terms of you going forward, then, so you know we've talked about where you've come from, we've talked about your companies now, we've talked about where your end goal is, we've talked about your team development, we've talked about how do you manage pressure, how do you manage stress, and you know, where did that drive and all that come from, which are all real valuable points. But for anybody listening now that's listened to everything you've said, it's going to come across as quite inspirational and aspirational. It will. You know, you're an inspirational guy.
We talk about this a lot, don't we? When people, you know, congratulate us and things.
Yeah, you know, I seen you squirm then inside because you're like, what do you want about it? You know, I'm just.
The thing is, right, like I can appreciate that, right? Where like some people think it's inspirational and that's great, but like, the thing is, I think the mindset that I'm in is that I don't let myself get proud, because if I start letting myself get proud, I feel like demotivation hits home quick, and I need to feel like I'm miles away.
So like, you've always got that bigger goal that you're chasing.
We joke that it's like an insult sometimes when people are like, "Oh, well done," but it's a nice gesture. Don't get me wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely. But it's funny, like with this mindset where you feel like you're miles away.
Yeah. And do you think that comes back down to being a perfectionist, like you mentioned?
Yeah, it does. It does, and like my goals have more than 10x now, I think, in the last year.
Yeah.
Easy.
So going forward then, what's an exciting trend or something that you're really excited about by the future that you think others should like be keeping their eye on? What's, you know, is there an exciting project you're working on or something you see in the environment, like, you know, crypto or anything like that? What opportunities do you think is going to be there coming up?
Well, I think you're in a major opportunity right now. The government is changing the rules for energy ratings on properties.
Yeah.
So you're procuring these type of properties that have these energy ratings already, and at the very start, you're doing an EPCA, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So by 2025, the government intends to make it a regulation for all existing tenancies to be within an EPC rating of A to C.
Right.
Now, being a mortgage broker, I see an EPC rating quite a lot, and most properties fall in the category of E, which is acceptable right now, just. And by 2028, all new tenancies will also be required to have an EPC rating of A to C. Now, you're in that trend. You're procuring these properties. You're also making those properties more valuable, cheaper to finance. Mortgage products at the moment are usually about 0.5% cheaper around that for properties that fall in the category of A to C.
Yeah.
Because they will be less of a problem for a lender owning a mortgage book with all these properties that haven't caught up to regulations yet.
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, I think that's an exciting one. In terms of development, where I'm seeing a lot of things change with planning and concessions, I think that's quite exciting because now I've worked through these issues, I can accumulate more of the same sort of projects and benefit from those. But really, like, I'm been in the scaffolding space. we're very much invested in a tube and fit type scaffolding company. For those who don't know what that is, it's scaffolding tube and fittings. It's the old school way.
Yeah.
You know, but it's classic. You know, everyone's always probably going to need tube and fit. But system scaffolding, if you go away and you see these like heritage buildings, cathedrals, and they've got scaffolding on them,
Bridges.
with hoists and bridges, a lot of that tends to be system scaffolding. So when I bought Square Scaffolding, I knew nothing about scaffolding. You know, that tends to be the way when I go to business, is know nothing and find out later. You know, having your back against the wall and that type of pressure is what I need to be better, right? Ever since then, I've learned a bit about system scaffolding. I've seen the potential in it, and I want to know more. And that is probably going to be the future of Square Scaffolding for me.
Oh, is it?
System scaffolding.
Wow.
So I'm going to probably get there with mergers and acquisitions.
Nice.
And also, I'm going to be better as well and go on a scaffolding inspector's course.
Okay.
Not because I want to be that involved, but you know, like you with the quantity surveying, you've got to talk the language, and anything you can get to gain experience doesn't always have to be through business and learning, through failure. It can also be the classic theory way. You know, that can avoid errors.
Yeah, well, I'm a massive advocate for the theory as well as the practice.
Exactly.
And, you know, I read a lot, I listen a lot. You know, whether it's audiobooks or podcasts or YouTube videos or very specific questions that I want answer to. And I believe you're the same as well, aren't you? So
yeah,
I don't read every day.
Yeah, I don't read as much as I'd like to now because of being so busy. And what do you choose is like, you know, volume of business or taking time to I would love to read more, but yeah, you're busy, always on the move. And you mentioned podcasts to me earlier. That's a great way to soak it up. You know, whatever you want, it's available now in audio form.
Yeah.
You know, David Goggins, if you need some motivation, you know, so.
Definitely. Okay, great. Well, look, Joe, been amazing value. We could talk for hours. We could go into so much detail, but I think, you know, the audience has had tremendous amount of value there and inspiration. Is there just one final piece of advice I'd like to leave for those, again, to take the next step if they're interested, whether it be business or property? You know, what's one last piece of advice that you would give them?
Staying comfortable, and if you're looking to get into property, I would make sure that you de-risk it as much as possible and just have a go, and don't necessarily have to learn so much. Learn by doing.
Yeah. And if they want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Again, touch me on Instagram. I'm Joe Mortgage Lane, or you can contact me at joe@mortgagelane.co.uk.